The massive ship appeared on a quiet Tuesday morning. It came without warning, silently breaking through the clouds above New York City. The ship was beautiful, all smooth curves and gleaming silver, nothing like the clunky spacecraft humans had built. It was 3 times the size of the Empire State Building and hung in the air like a giant whale swimming through the sky. People stopped in the streets, cars screeched to a halt, and millions of phones pointed upward. Nobody ran. Nobody screamed. The world just watched and waited. "This is Princess Sky of the Bright Empire." A gentle voice echoed across the city. The words came in perfect English, though they had a musical quality that no human voice could make. "We come in peace and friendship." The UN Security Council gathered within the hour. Military jets circled the alien ship at a safe distance, but the vessel made no aggressive moves. It simply waited, floating above the city like a patient guardian. Jake Stone watched it all from his security post at the UN building. At 40 years old, with graying temples and eyes that had seen too much combat, he wasn't easily impressed. But this was different. His military training told him to be suspicious, but something about the ship's graceful presence felt genuine. The landing happened at sunset. A beam of soft golden light touched down in the UN Plaza, and 3 figures descended. The first was clearly Princess Sky, tall and elegant, with skin that seemed to shimmer like mother of pearl. Her 2 guards were broader, their armor gleaming with technology that made Earth's best weapons look like toys. "Your world is young," Princess Sky said to the gathered leaders, "but we have watched your progress with great interest. Humanity has achieved in centuries what took other races millennia." The princess moved with impossible grace as she approached the UN Secretary-General. Her smile was warm, though her features were just alien enough to remind everyone that she came from a civilization far beyond Earth's understanding. "We have seen your wars," she continued, "but we have also seen your art, your music, your determination to reach the stars despite your limitations. The Bright Empire believes you are ready to join the galactic community." Over the next few days, the princess shared glimpses of what that might mean. She showed them holograms of worlds that took the breath away, cities that floated in gas giants, gardens that grew among the stars, and ships that could cross galaxies in weeks. Jake watched it all from his security position, noting how the princess's guards relaxed slightly each day. They were professional, but they clearly didn't see Earth as a threat. Their technology was too advanced, their civilization too old. Earth must have seemed like a planet of children to them. But Jake saw something else in Princess Sky's eyes when she spoke with humans. She was fascinated by their quick minds, their ability to grasp new concepts, their willingness to challenge conventional thinking. Where her guards saw primitives, she saw potential. "Your species adapts faster than any we have encountered," she told the UN Assembly on the 5th day. "You see solutions where others see only problems. This is why we chose Earth as our first contact in this sector." The world changed quickly after that. Stock markets soared as the Bright Empire shared small pieces of their technology. Disease rates dropped as they helped upgrade Earth's medical knowledge. Clean energy became a reality instead of a dream. But not everyone in the galaxy was happy about Earth's rise. In the darkness between the stars, ancient powers watched with growing concern. They saw humanity's rapid progress, their unpredictable nature, their dangerous potential, and they began to make plans. Princess Sky knew the risks. She had fought for this first contact mission, argued that humanity deserved a chance. As she looked out over the New York skyline on her 10th evening on Earth, she felt both hope and worry. She had set something in motion, something that could either lift humanity to the stars or bring the galaxy's darkness to Earth's doorstep. She just didn't know which would come first. 3 months after first contact, Geneva sparkled under a warm spring sun. The city had been chosen for the signing of the Earth-Bright Empire Alliance, and the streets were filled with celebration. Flags from every nation on Earth flew alongside the silver banner of the Bright Empire. Jake Stone stood at his post near the main stage, scanning the crowd. His earpiece buzzed with routine security checks. Everything seemed perfect. Too perfect. His old combat instincts warned him. 20 years in special forces had taught him that perfect days often turned bad fast. Princess Sky stood on the stage in a dress that seemed woven from starlight. "Earth has exceeded all our expectations," she said, her voice carrying across the plaza. "In just 3 months, you have learned what takes most species years to grasp. Today, we formally welcome humanity into the galactic community." The crowd cheered. Cameras flashed. And then the sky turned black. It happened so fast that most people thought it was just clouds. But Jake knew better. He had studied every type of ship the Bright Empire had shown them. And these were different. These were predators. Hostile craft. He shouted into his radio, already moving toward the princess. "Get her inside." The princess's guards raised their energy shields, but they were too slow. A beam of red light cut through their defenses like they were paper. Jake watched in horror as 3 dark shapes dropped from the largest ship, landing on the stage with earth-shaking force. They were massive, covered in black armor that seemed to swallow light. Their helmets had no features, just smooth, reflective surfaces that showed distorted mirrors of the panicking crowd. One of them reached for Princess Sky. Jake fired his standard-issue pistol, knowing it was useless against their armor, but hoping to distract them. The bullets pinged off harmlessly, but one of the warriors turned toward him. In that split second, Jake saw his own death in that featureless mask. But they weren't here to kill. The warrior simply waved a hand, and Jake felt himself frozen in place, unable to move. All around the plaza, others were similarly paralyzed. They could only watch as the Dark Warriors grabbed Princess Sky. "The Dark Fleet sends its regards to the Bright Empire," one of them announced, his voice like grinding metal. "Your princess will make an excellent bride for our war chief. Perhaps this will teach you to waste time with primitive worlds." Princess Sky fought against their grip, her usual grace replaced by desperate strength. "Earth is not primitive," she shouted. "They are young, yes, but they have potential you cannot imagine." The warrior laughed. "Potential? We've calculated all possible outcomes. In 1,000 years, they might be worth noticing. But now, they're nothing but an annoyance." A beam of red light surrounded the warriors and the princess. Just before they vanished, Sky locked eyes with Jake. In that moment, he saw something he recognized. Not fear, but determination. She believed in humanity, even now. Then they were gone. The dark ships vanished as quickly as they had appeared, leaving only silence and the afternoon sun. The paralysis wore off slowly. People fell to their knees, gasping. The princess's guards picked themselves up. Their pride hurt worse than their bodies. Emergency crews rushed in, though there were surprisingly few injuries. The Dark Fleet had been surgical in their attack. Jake stood on the empty stage, his fists clenched. He had failed to protect her, but that wasn't what made him angry. It was their dismissal of humanity, their casual certainty that Earth didn't matter. Above the plaza, the giant screens still showed the frozen image of Princess Sky, captured moments before the attack. She had believed in humanity's potential. She had fought for Earth's place among the stars. Now Earth would show the galaxy exactly what primitive humans could do. In the chaos that followed, as governments argued, and the Bright Empire's diplomats made frantic calls across space, Jake Stone made a decision. He would prove those dark warriors wrong. One human would be enough to make them regret ever hearing the word Earth. The emergency meeting room at the UN was packed with both human and alien representatives. Holograms showed the Bright Empire's scattered fleet, each ship marked in blue, fighting battles across 3 different galaxies. The Dark Fleet's territory glowed in angry red, a massive region of space that seemed to swallow any hope of a rescue mission. "Our forces are stretched too thin," Admiral Light said, his hologram flickering with frustration. Like all high-ranking Bright Empire officers, he had chosen a simple name for human communication: To reach the Dark Fleet's stronghold, we would need to abandon our defense of two major trade routes. Jake Stone stood at the back of the room, watching. He hadn't slept since the abduction 3 days ago. Dark circles showed under his eyes, but his mind was clearer than ever. What about a small team? Someone suggested. A stealth mission. The Admiral shook his head. The Dark Fleet knows all our stealth technology. They would detect any of our ships or warriors the moment we entered their space. He paused, then added quietly, and they have designed their security systems to recognize every known species in the galaxy. That's when Jake stepped forward. Every known species, he said, his voice cutting through the murmurs, but not humans. The room fell silent. All eyes turned to him, human eyes confused, alien eyes disbelieving. You? Admiral Light asked. The single human. Yes. Jake walked to the center of the room. You said it yourself. Their systems are designed to detect known species, but they dismissed us as primitives, remember? They won't be looking for human biosignatures because they don't think we're worth watching. The Admiral's hologram flickered as he considered this. Even if that's true, you would need advanced training, weapons. So train me, Jake interrupted. The princess told us humans learn faster than any species you've encountered. Test that theory. Give me your best tech, your hardest training. I bet I can learn it in weeks instead of years. A bright Empire scientist stepped forward, her silver skin catching the light. It's true that humans have shown remarkable adaptation rates. Their brains form new neural pathways at 3 times the galactic average. And Jake added, I have 20 years of special forces experience. I know how to move unseen, how to improvise, how to think differently than your warriors. The Dark Fleet is expecting your tactics. They won't be ready for human warfare. The room erupted in argument. Human leaders worried about risking Earth's relationship with the Bright Empire if Jake failed. Alien diplomats argued that sending a primitive species on such a mission would be seen as an insult. But Admiral Light raised his hand for silence. When I first met Princess Sky, he said slowly, she told me something interesting about humans. She said they have a quality we've lost over our millennia of advancement. They still know how to be unpredictable. He turned his holographic gaze to Jake. You understand this is likely a one-way mission. The Dark Fleet's stronghold has never been breached. Jake nodded. Someone once told me that special forces isn't about being the strongest or having the best weapons. It's about being smarter, more creative, and more determined than your enemy thinks you can be. The Admiral was quiet for a long moment. Then he smiled, the first time anyone had seen a Bright Empire official do so since the abduction. Very well, he said. We will give you our most advanced training, our best technology. But understand this. If you fail, the Dark Fleet won't just kill you. They'll use you to prove that humanity truly is primitive and unworthy of galactic society. Jake looked around the room, at the worried faces of both humans and aliens. Then he straightened his shoulders and said the words that would change his life forever. Then I guess I'd better not fail. The training facility orbited Jupiter, hidden from Earth's telescopes by advanced cloaking technology. Jake had been there for 2 weeks, and every muscle in his body hurt. But he hadn't complained once. Again, said Instructor Beam, his silver armor gleaming under the station's lights. He held up a device that looked like a curved sword, but could transform into 15 different weapons. No human has ever mastered the phase blade. Most species take years to learn even its basic forms. Jake wiped sweat from his forehead and grabbed the weapon. His hands were covered in blisters, but he ignored the pain. The blade hummed to life, responding to his touch. Watch closely, Beam said to the other instructors. This is where they always fa. Before he could finish, Jake moved. The blade shifted forms smoothly, sword to spear to whip to shield, each change flowing into the next. His movements weren't graceful like the Bright Empire warriors, but they were effective. He finished the sequence and stood ready, breathing hard but steady. Beam's eyes widened. 3 weeks of training, he muttered. You just performed a sequence that takes most warriors 3 years to master. Jake shrugged. Humans are good at video games. This isn't so different. Just need to remember the right combinations. That was only the beginning. In the gravity chamber, they discovered that humans could adapt to changes in gravity faster than any known species. While alien trainees needed days to adjust, Jake could switch from 0G to triple Earth gravity in hours. It's because Earth's gravity changes slightly all the time, the human scientist explained to the amazed aliens. When we walk uphill, downstairs, or jump, our bodies constantly adjust to different gravitational forces. We've evolved to adapt quickly. The stealth training brought more surprises. Jake's human hearing could pick up sounds that the Bright Empire's best sensors missed. His eyes, though less sharp than alien ones, were better at spotting movement and adapting to darkness. Your primitive features are actually advantages, Instructor Shadow told him during stealth practice. The Dark Fleet's security systems are designed to detect perfect vision, perfect hearing. They don't look for human imperfections. 1 month into training, they tested Jake's endurance. He ran for 6 hours in heavy armor, fought training drones until his arms shook, and still kept going. The aliens couldn't understand it. How are you still moving? Beam asked. Your muscles should have failed hours ago. Jake took a drink of water. Humans evolved as persistence hunters, he explained. We're not the strongest or fastest, but we can keep going longer than almost anything. Our ancestors would chase prey until it collapsed from exhaustion. The final test came in the combat simulator. Jake faced a recreation of a Dark Fleet warrior, using everything he had learned. The alien technology gave him enhanced strength and speed, but it was his human creativity that made the difference. Instead of following standard combat protocols, he improvised. He used the environment in ways the simulator hadn't predicted, combined weapons in ways they weren't designed for. When the simulation ended, even the strictest instructors were impressed. I understand now, Beam said quietly, why the princess believed in humans so strongly. He looked at Jake with new respect. You don't just learn our technology, you find new ways to use it, ways we never considered. Jake checked his gear one last time. The mission would begin tomorrow, and he needed everything to be perfect. His muscles ached, his body was covered in bruises, but his mind was sharp and ready. The Dark Fleet thinks humans are primitive, he said, his voice firm. They think we're not worth watching. That's going to be their biggest mistake. As he looked out the window at Jupiter's swirling clouds, Jake allowed himself a small smile. The aliens had given him their best technology, their hardest training, expecting him to fail. Instead, he had shown them something they had forgotten over their millennia of advancement. Sometimes the old ways, the primitive ways, were exactly what you needed. The Dark Fleet's stronghold hung in space like a giant black spider. Jake's small ship approached from behind a field of asteroids, its cloaking system making it nearly invisible. He wore the most advanced stealth suit the Bright Empire could provide, but his greatest advantage was simply being human. Security scan incoming. The ship's computer warned. Dark Fleet patrol approaching. Jake stayed perfectly still as the patrol ship passed nearby. His heart beat steadily. He'd faced worse odds in his Special Forces days. The patrol scanners swept over his position, looking for known alien life signs, but they weren't programmed to detect human biology. The ship passed by without stopping. Primitive species have their uses after all, Jake muttered to himself, remembering the Dark Fleet warrior's dismissive words from the abduction. The stronghold grew larger in his view screen. It was massive, with layers of defenses that had defeated every rescue attempt for thousands of years. But Jake saw something the aliens had missed: patterns in the patrol routes, gaps in the sensor coverage. The Dark Fleet's defenses were perfect against advanced attacks, but they had never faced human military tactics. Jake waited for the perfect moment, then fired his ship's engines. He rode the heat trail of a larger cargo vessel, hiding in its shadow like a remora fish behind a shark. The cargo ship's own energy signature masked his approach. It was an old Earth Navy trick, adapted for space warfare. The landing bay was heavily guarded, but Jake didn't go there. Instead, he directed his ship toward what looked like a maintenance hatch. The bright Empire's intelligence suggested it was used for releasing waste into space. Sometimes the back door is better than the front, Jake remembered his old commanding officer saying. He attached his ship to the hatch using magnetic clamps, another piece of primitive human technology that the Dark Fleet's sensors ignored. Getting inside was the tricky part. Jake used his suit's advanced features to cut through the hatch, timing his work with the Stronghold's waste disposal schedule. When the next purge came, he rode the reverse pressure into the station. Inside, he found himself in a narrow maintenance tunnel. His human nose wrinkled at the smell. Some things were universal, even in space. But the smell was actually helpful. The Dark Fleet's warriors, with their advanced environmental suits, never came down here. The maintenance was done by robots. Jake moved carefully through the tunnels, using his suit's sensors to map his route. The Princess would be kept in the high security levels, but getting there directly would be suicide. Instead, he planned to work his way up through the maintenance systems. Movement ahead, his suit warned. Jake pressed himself against a wall as a maintenance robot rolled past. The robot's sensors swept over him, but like everything else in the Stronghold, they were designed to detect known species. To the robot, Jake was just another piece of machinery. He followed the robot's path, noting how it accessed different levels. Each time it passed through a security checkpoint, Jake watched and learned. The Dark Fleet's security was incredibly advanced, but it followed strict patterns. And if there was one thing humans were good at, it was finding patterns. 4 hours later, Jake reached the upper levels. He'd avoided 3 patrol routes, copied access codes from maintenance robots, and used the Stronghold's own waste disposal systems to move between floors. It wasn't elegant, but it worked. Then he heard voices, actual voices, not computer chatter. He peered around a corner and saw 2 Dark Fleet warriors standing guard outside an ornate door. The war chief wants the marriage ceremony prepared within 2 days, one guard said. The princess still refuses to cooperate, but it doesn't matter. Jake smiled grimly. He'd found his target. More importantly, he'd proved something crucial. The Dark Fleet's perfect defense had a flaw. They were so focused on defending against advanced threats that they'd forgotten a basic military truth. Sometimes the best technology isn't the newest. Sometimes it's the simple solutions, the primitive tactics, that work best. Now he just had to rescue a princess from the most secure room in the most secure fortress in the galaxy, and he had to do it before the forced marriage ceremony began. Good thing humans like a challenge, he whispered to himself, checking his weapons. It was time to show the Dark Fleet why underestimating primitive species was a very bad idea. Jake waited in the maintenance shaft, counting seconds. The guards changed shifts every 4 hours, a pattern so perfect it could only have been created by machines. That perfection was their weakness. 3, 2, 1. The guards turned to leave just as a maintenance robot approached. Jake had reprogrammed it to release a small amount of cleaning gas, harmless, but enough to trigger the guards' armor sensors. As expected, they stepped away from the door to let the robot work. That's when Jake moved. His stealth suit, combined with his careful timing, got him through the door before it closed. Inside, he found himself in a luxurious prison cell. Princess Sky sat on a curved chair, her usual glow dimmed but not extinguished. "I wondered when Earth would send someone," she said without turning. "Though I expected more than one human. Earth didn't send me," Jake replied, dropping his stealth field. "I volunteered." The princess turned, her eyes widening. "The security guard from Geneva." "But how did you?" She stopped, noticing his modified bright Empire armor. "You learned to use our technology. Humans are good at learning new things." Jake moved to the door's control panel. "But right now, we need to move. The war chief plans to force the marriage ceremony in less than 2 days. Sky stood up gracefully. The door is coded to my DNA. They think it makes escape impossible since I can't open it from this side. Jake smiled. Good thing I came through the maintenance entrance then, but we're not leaving that way. He pulled a small device from his belt, something he'd built himself, combining Earth demolitions knowledge with alien tech. What is that? Sky asked. We call it a shake charge. Sometimes old tricks work better than new technology. The explosion was small but precise, cutting through the door's lower hinge. Jake kicked the weakened door, and it fell outward onto the surprised guards who had rushed back at the sound. Run, Jake said, already moving. But the princess was right beside him, matching his pace. Alarms blared throughout the stronghold. They reached the first intersection, just as a squad of Dark Fleet warriors appeared. Jake activated his phase blade, the weapon shifting forms as he fought. The warriors were stronger, their armor more advanced, but they weren't ready for human combat tactics. Jake didn't try to overpower them. Instead, he used their strength against them, letting their heavy armor work against them in the narrow corridor. Princess Sky proved she could fight too, using a fallen warrior's weapon with surprising skill. The docking bay is closest, Sky said as they ran. Jake shook his head. They'll expect that. We're taking my route. He led her into a maintenance tunnel. Behind them, heavy boots pounded on metal floors as more warriors gave chase. Jake activated his final surprise, small devices he planted during his infiltration. Cover your ears, he warned. The devices activated, sending out sound waves at frequencies that humans barely noticed, but that played havoc with the Dark Fleet's advanced sensor systems. The pursuing warriors stumbled, their armor systems overwhelmed by the conflicting data. Primitive but effective, Sky said with admiration. They reached Jake's ship just as the Dark Fleet was reorganizing. As they strapped in, a massive blast door began to close over the maintenance hatch. We'll never make it, Sky said. Watch this, Jake replied. He fired the engines at full power, then cut them completely. The ship shot forward, then went dark, slipping through the closing door like a bullet through a closing eye. Behind them, the Dark Fleet's mighty fortress scrambled to respond, but their weapons were aimed at the docking bays, their ships ready to chase advanced Bright Empire vessels. They weren't prepared for a small ship running dark, using the stronghold's own waste disposal current to mask its escape. As they cleared the defense perimeter, Princess Sky looked at Jake with new understanding. You did what no one has done in 10,000 years. You broke into the Dark Fleet stronghold and escaped. Jake checked their course back to friendly space. Humans are good at improvising, and we're really good at proving people wrong when they underestimate us. The Dark Fleet will never live this down, Sky said with a smile. Their perfect security, their advanced technology, defeated by a single human using primitive tactics. That's the thing about humans, Jake replied as they jumped to light speed. We don't need to be the most advanced. We just need to be the most creative. The news spread across the galaxy like wildfire. A single human had breached the Dark Fleet's impenetrable fortress. The story grew with each telling. How Earth's primitive warrior had turned the Dark Fleet's own advanced technology against them. How he had used simple solutions to defeat complex security systems. Jake stood before the Galactic Council 1 week later, his Bright Empire armor polished but still showing scars from the rescue. Princess Sky stood beside him, her natural glow fully restored. The council chamber was packed with representatives from 1,000 worlds, all wanting to see the human who had done the impossible. The Dark Fleet's leadership has withdrawn their marriage demands, Sky announced to the assembly. More importantly, they have agreed to peace talks with the Bright Empire. Their belief in their own superiority was shaken by this primitive approach to warfare. She smiled at the last words, and several council members shifted uncomfortably in their seats. Everyone knew she was quoting the Dark Fleet's dismissal of humanity. The head counselor, an ancient being with skin like flowing mercury, leaned forward. We have reviewed the mission records. Your tactics were Unusual, warrior stone. Humans have a saying, Jake replied. Sometimes the best way forward is to think backward. Your technology is amazing, but sometimes a simple solution works better than a complex one. Indeed, the counselor's voice carried across the chamber. And that brings us to the matter of Earth's status in the galactic community. Many believe your world was too young, too primitive to join us. Recent events have changed that perception. Princess Sky stepped forward. Earth has proven itself not just through Warrior Stone's actions, but through how they approach problems. Their very primitive nature, as some called it, gives them insights our advanced civilizations have forgotten. The council chamber filled with murmurs as images appeared in the air. Human art, music, scientific discoveries, and scenes from history. They showed humanity's struggles, their setbacks, but also their constant drive to improve, to solve problems in new ways. Therefore, the head counselor announced, Earth is hereby granted full membership in the galactic community, with all rights and responsibilities that entails. Moreover, we request that Earth establish a special training program. Many worlds wish to learn these primitive tactics that proved so effective. Jake couldn't help but smile at the irony. The very things the Dark Fleet had mocked, human ingenuity, Earth's primitive technology, their unconventional thinking, were now being seen as valuable teachings. After the ceremony, in a quiet garden designed to mimic Earth's forests, Princess Sky turned to Jake. You've changed things, you know. Not just for Earth, but for the entire galaxy. We had become too dependent on advanced technology, too certain of our superiority. Humans have another saying, Jake replied. The more complex the system, the more ways it can fail. Sometimes the best solution is the simple one. The Dark Fleet learned that lesson well. Sky looked up at the artificial sky above them. They thought their fortress was perfect because it could defeat any advanced attack. They never considered someone might use maintenance tunnels and simple explosives. That's humanity's real strength, Jake said. Not our technology or our weapons, but our ability to look at problems differently. To find solutions others miss because they're too focused on complexity. As if to prove his point, a group of alien military officers approached, asking Jake to teach them about Earth's special tactics. He saw genuine respect in their eyes now, not the dismissal he'd faced before. The galaxy had learned an important lesson. Never underestimate a species just because they seem primitive. Sometimes, being primitive just means remembering solutions that others have forgotten. And sometimes, one human warrior is all it takes to prove that the simplest approach can defeat the most advanced defenses. Behind them, Earth shone like a blue jewel in space, no longer just a young world full of primitive beings, but a respected member of the galactic community. All because one human had shown the galaxy that sometimes the old ways were the best ways. Ready to teach some advanced civilizations how to think primitively? Sky asked with a smile. Jake nodded. Time to show them why Earth's warriors are special. Let's start with lesson 1. Sometimes the best technology isn't technology at all. It's how you think.